agreed to, and I call the honourable member for Parramatta.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I rise to support the Nature Repair Market Bill 2023. Deputy Speaker, let's get something clear. This government was elected to act on climate change. We were elected to stop the decade of damage to our country's unique natural environment caused by successive coalition governments. And we were elected to repair our natural environment with a whole-of-community effort, bringing together businesses, organisations, governments and grassroots groups to tackle this existential threat to our way of life. Our objective is to leave our planet, our country and our natural environment in a better place for future generations. We don't want to trash it for short-term gains, which was exactly what those opposite did for almost a decade. And, Deputy Speaker, we know the story of the Coalition's record on the environment from the 2021 State of the Environment report. The very same report that the now Deputy Opposition Leader hid from the Australian people. And the findings of this report show why. It was embarrassing. It said that the environment suffered devastating damage and it predicted that it would only get worse. Specifically, the report found that Australia had lost more mammal species to extinction than any other continent. More than any other continent. And for the first time in this continent's history, Australia has had more foreign plant species than native species. That's absolutely shocking. The destruction of our biodiversity, the deleterious effects of decades of neglect. And to make matters worse, between 2000 and 2017, habitat the size of Tasmania has been cleared. That's the size of an entire state in less than 2 decades. Forests gone, many of which will never be replaced or take decades to replace. This was the mess left behind by those opposite. That was a decade when the word government seemed to cover everything but the environment. A decade where climate laws were axed, where environmental laws were broken, where 22 different energy policies were floated but never landed, and where billions of dollars were cut from our Environment Department. It's clear what the Coalition thought about our natural environment when they were in government. It was just another program waiting to be cut, so they could save $1 billion here and $1 billion there. They wanted to keep claiming the title of better economic managers, and even then they couldn't manage a single budget surplus. Deputy Speaker, now more than ever, we need to make significant investments in conservation and protection of our natural heritage to secure a better environment for our future. An environment worth inheriting from us by future generations. An environment entrusted to us by previous generations. And, Deputy Speaker, when I say that protecting our environment is an investment, I really do mean it. Not just in terms of the social and cultural benefits, but the significant economic benefits just waiting to be unlocked. When a recent independent report was done on the market for biodiversity in Australia, an estimated $137 billion in financial flows by 2050 were discovered. That is a huge long-term economic opportunity that was left untapped by the former government. And we know around the world that countries that have preserved their environment have reaped enormous economic dividends, whether it be in tourism or natural industries or agriculture. Environmental protection has made good economic sense. And those countries that have degraded their environments, have allowed the quality of their land to erode, have allowed their forests to be cut down, their rivers and seas to be polluted, they've inflicted on themselves terrible economic damage. Deputy Speaker, with this bill, we're not only taking advantage of the economic opportunity afforded by the environment, but we're also putting forward real solutions. and making a real effort when it comes to protecting our natural environment. The Nature Repair Market Bill 2023 Act provides a framework for a voluntary national market that delivers on improved biodiversity outcomes. Eligible landholders who undertake projects that enhance or protect our nature and its biodiversity can receive a tradable certificate tracked through a national register. This bill will also enable the Clean Energy Regulator, an independent statutory authority, to issue Australian landholders with these tradable biodiversity certificates. These certificates can then be sold to businesses, organisations, governments and individuals. And by establishing this market in legislation, will ensure its ongoing integrity while encouraging and growing investment in nature. This in turn will help drive environmental improvements across Australia. Deputy Speaker, this market will operate in parallel with the existing carbon market. Both markets will be facilitated by the same proven and independent authority. This alignment will also make it easier for intersections in projects encouraging carbon farming to also deliver benefits for biodiversity. The parallel operation of these markets will also address one of the biggest concerns when it comes to introducing nature repair market implementation. By administering this market through the Clean Energy Regulator, not only will the nature repair market benefit from the regulator's experience, but also the administrative efficiencies that come from having clear and accurate oversight of claims made in both markets. Importantly, this bill and the establishment of the nature repair market has been informed by the recent review of carbon crediting by Professor Ian Chubb. Lessons learned from the carbon market have been taken into account and will continue to be reflected on as environmental markets continue to develop. Deputy Speaker, this bill and the nature repair market is an important part of our Nature Positive Plan. The government published this plan in December last year in response to the shocking findings from the 2021 State of the Environment report. Our government's response, outlined in the Nature Positive Plan, is guided by three fundamental principles. First, the need to better protect Australia's environment and prevent further extinction of native flora and fauna. Second, the need for faster decision-making and clear priorities when it comes to action on environmental protections. And third, the need to restore public accountability and trust in environmental decision-making. Deputy Speaker, this bill begins the process of repairing our nature by acting on all three of these points. In particular, this bill on the design of the nature repair market reflects our commitment to restoring public accountability and trust. In fact, transparency will be the core element of this scheme. Comprehensive information about projects and certificates will be made available on a public register. And additional information will be published by the regulator alongside active releases of relevant data by the Department of Climate Change, Energy, the Environment and Water. This will help both the Parliament and the public monitor this scheme and allow for citizen oversight. And this stands in stark contrast to the approach of those opposite, an approach that was guided by lack of transparency, by hiding facts from the Australian people when it came to damage to our biodiversity or the rise in energy costs or the impacts of climate change. On that side, we saw a decade of denial, delay and hidden information. The approach in this bill, consistent with the approach of this government more broadly, is about delivering transparency, openness and accountability. But as the Nature Positive Plan states, restoring public accountability and trust is not just good for its own sake, but it provides key economic benefits as well. Restoring public accountability and trust is key to supporting certainty and value to the market and to investors. And when coupled with the second principle of faster decision-making and clearer priorities, accountability and trust can be important to de-risk investments and promote sustainable economic development. Implemented as part of the Nature Positive Plan's recommendations, they have the potential to assist in long-term economic growth, the potential to increase employment, to create jobs and support a greater capacity to invest in environment and social priorities. Deputy Speaker, the Nature Positive Plan also states what we all know. It states the obvious, that a healthy and resilient environment is necessary for a vibrant economy. And over a decade we watched the so-called better economic managers, as they like to think of themselves, the Coalition, hard at work. But strangely enough, they weren't hard at work delivering better environment or climate policies. They certainly weren't hard at work delivering budget surpluses or strong jobs growth. What they were doing was hard at work stoking the flames of climate wars rather than delivering on climate policies, watching our environment degrade and biodiversity decline. In 2009, Tony Abbott said the science of human-caused climate change was crap, and even went as far as claiming that climate change was probably doing good. This is a former Liberal Prime Minister talking about the environment that we all rely on and will hand down to our kids. That same year, Malcolm Turnbull admitted that his own party, and I quote, does not believe in human-caused global warming. And as he left office, Malcolm Turnbull said his biggest regret was failure to secure meaningful climate policies. They're honest when they leave, Deputy Speaker. It's a shame they're not as honest when they're in the parliament. Mr Turnbull didn't blame Labor for the lack of climate policies. He didn't blame a lack of business support. He didn't even blame vested interest. He blamed his own party, a party that he saw as having a reckless disregard for Australia and the global environment. And over this decade, the Coalition saw climate change as a political thorn in its side, an inconvenient conversation that needed to be shut down, pushed aside and silenced. But in doing so, they missed the voices of businesses across Australia who cried out for leadership. Leadership on climate, leadership on the environment. And for a decade, businesses had no certainty, no clarity, no incentive to deliver investment and change that was sorely required. The Coalition failed to offer businesses the integrity, trust and transparency that Australia so badly needed and our environment so richly deserved. And then the so-called party of business got left behind by their own constituency. Businesses started to recognise the value of environmental protection. They picked up the mantle of the ESG agenda, started to make significant improvements in each business's environmental record. They started to adopt plans to get to net zero, to report on their environmental impacts. Businesses were taking forward the agenda that the Liberal government was failing to take forward. Businesses, because they knew it was important to their employees, to their shareholders, to their customers, to their suppliers, they knew that protecting the environment was a critical part of Australia's future and critical to the success of their own business models. They received no leadership, no support from those opposite, but they did it anyway. And they did it because they knew it was the right thing to do and because they knew that without it, they would not have a strong business future of their own. So, Deputy Speaker, the Coalition have been left behind. Left behind on climate, left behind on environmental protection. The community's expectations have moved ahead. Businesses' actions have moved ahead. Investors and superannuation funds have moved ahead, all creating new standards, new practices to preserve Australia's important and rich biodiversity and our planet's precious climate. All of this has been done in the absence of leadership, and now the Labor government is here to pick up the mantle and support Australian businesses, people and community groups to deliver the leadership, to deliver the certainty, to deliver the accountability, to deliver the trust, so that all Australians know the direction that we're heading, which is to preserve and protect our environment for future generations.
The question is that the